Well, guess what? Let's recommend to the listeners to give themselves the gift of health and wellness throughout the entire year with AG1.
Yeah, Athletic Greens, AG1, you know what? Vitality, youth, Ponce de Leon. We're all searching for it. And AG1 at least gets us halfway there or gets us closer. I know that my wife and I and my house guests, we drink it each and every day. And AG1, it's part of our routine, bros.
Gets us there for me before 7 a.m. even. One of the first things I do in the morning, mix 1 scoop of powder with 8 ounces of water, covers my nutrition and dietary kind of needs throughout the course of the day. So I check that box, move throughout my day, and eat without having to map out a diet to make sure that I get all the supplements and vegetables and all that sort of stuff. So support us, find optimal health, go through our portal, which is athleticgreens.com/surf. And then also we've got NVS Fins with us today, Scott. We're riding NVS Fins all the time, but they're here with us on our podcast, Naked Viking Fins.
Yeah, just yesterday out in the water, I had a guy asking me about my Ryan Sakel Sabre twin fin, and we got into a deep dive on the fins, the sea dry fins, which are sort of have a spacey, kind of an odd look to them, and they usually get people's attention. And so we went in a cool little discussion about those fins. Yeah, NVS, Naked Vikings. A big fan, Naked Viking Surf Fins. Yes, NVS.
Yeah. surfnvs.com is their website, and their Apex series fins are made out of that G10 technology, and you can find them in any size and configuration: single fins, twins, quads, tris, all that sort of stuff. So go to surfnvs.com.
Okay. Real water sports, David. Time to win a surfboard. It's that time of year, snow bells are ringing and frost is clinging, and who knew, it's the most wonderful time of the year to win a friggin' surfboard from Real Water Sports.
It's the season of giving, so we just have to give one away.
Right. Even though we give one away every month.
Pretty much, yeah. So Real Water Sports, of course,
by the way, hold
yeah,
on.
but
I just had a thought.
Okay.
Next Christmas, the 12 days of Christmas, we give one board away each day. Boom, 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 boom.
Who's financing this?
Hell if I know, but it's a good idea. This is a good idea. We gotta think this through.
6 out of your quiver shed and 6 out of mine.
Look, there's one right there. See that one right up there?
Exactly. You can afford to drop 6 of those.
Real Water Sports. Come on.
Yeah. They've got, so the deal is they have 1,500 boards in their inventory, and they've unlocked the code for shipping. So they're shipping boards daily to people around the world, flat rate, and shows up guaranteed to be blemish free. So you don't have to worry about transit or anything like that. And so we're partnering with them to give away a surfboard. One lucky winner that we will select on January 1st. It's New Year's Day. I might have to pick it on January 2nd. We'll see how that day goes, or that night goes. But we're going to pick one winner on January 1st at random from our list of supporters. So how do you support? It's $5 a month. It's the foundation of this podcast business. You can do it on surfsplendorpodcast.com, set up that support. And if you already support, great, you're in it to win. If not, as long as you get that in before the end of the month, Pacific Standard Time, you will be included. We'll pick that lucky winner, and then they can pick any board from realwatersports.com's inventory.
Well, very good. Look, Real Water Sports, it's your time to win a board. Subscribe and be entered to win.
realwatersports.com.
Yeah, guy. Yeah, friggin' guy. You know what? It's time for Spit. It is David Lee Scales, Scott Bass. We're talking all things surf and a few other things as well. And it's in the afternoon, David, which is a little odd for you and I. I've got some athletic greens in my system. I should be on top of my game, and we shall see. I have questions for you though.
Christmas related questions?
No,
Oh,
no, I got your card though. Thank you very much. We appreciated your card. It was a lovely card.
thank you. You're welcome.
And no, my questions for you are about the recent podcast that you've done. So you did one with Lane
Oh.
Davey,
Yes, that's right.
and I see it out there on Instagram. And of course, we talked about it last week. But it seems like you're getting a lot of really positive feedback about the Lane Davey podcast that you did on Surf Splendor, and specifically about the hierarchy or lack thereof at Pipeline and locations beyond.
Yeah. I think it's a relevant conversation now more than ever. What's surprising is that there always used to be respect for the hierarchy and an inherent knowing that the hierarchy serves a purpose. The hierarchy ensures that everybody has a turn and gets a chance and learns the way to get waves and all that sort of thing. And so it's understandable that the hierarchy would break down a little bit as it gets more crowded. What's shocking is that the new surfers don't understand that the hierarchy was in place for a reason. It seems like the newer surfers think that the hierarchy is somehow elitist, and it's meant to not allow people who are new to get waves as opposed to teaching them how to get waves. And so I think that's what's shocking. And Lane did a phenomenal job of explaining the virtues inherent in it, that it taught her lessons, not only about surfing, but lessons about life that she uses daily, that she wouldn't have learned elsewhere.
Yeah, it's interesting, when I think about my own personal experience with said hierarchy, I will raise my hand and acknowledge that I'm not sure I was motivated about teaching anybody the right and wrong way to do this thing. I would suggest to you that there was more than a handful of surfers or the worst moments where I was stoked on the hierarchy solely for self-serving purposes.
Yeah.
And that it would allow me, because I had put in my time, to sort of edge people out. So I think it's crucial for this conversation to have some transparency, because it's this really weird quagmire, surfing, catching limited resources, i.e. waves, is a selfish pursuit, or at least it is in my case. I can't speak for everyone else listening, but it's rare that you see somebody suiting up, putting on their leash and going, yeah, I'm glad there's a hierarchy out there because I want to teach everybody how it's done. My experience is, I'm glad there's a hierarchy and that I'm in it somewhere. And that means that I'm going to potentially, because I've paid some dues, I'm going to get some waves. In other words, I think it's a little like almost fake altruism to suggest that, oh, the hierarchy's there so we can help you, show you how it's done. I'm calling kind of bullshit on that.
I don't think it's altruistic, but I don't think it's fake either. Like, the way that I see it is, if it keeps everybody sharp. So if the young buck comes into the lineup and they're not getting set waves, they're relegated down to the inside, and they learn how to surf those crappy waves, and they learn how to surf them actually so effectively and efficiently, it becomes, it keeps me on my A game, because now I'm like, shoot, they're surfing better than I am on a set wave. I kind of need to level up. And then they are gaining respect in the lineup. So now they're shoulder to shoulder with me on the outside, and they're jockeying probably for position now. So it's pushing me deep. And then, you know what I mean? So now I have to either assert my alpha male kind of dominance in that situation and then get shut down because I'm not as alpha as I think I am, or actually surf better and outposition him. So I think it just keeps everybody sharp and it keeps everything honest, basically.
No, I totally agree. I'm not doubting the power of it or that it's valid. I'm just saying that when I look at the hierarchy that's in the water, I don't look at it like, I'm glad it exists because it's going to teach people about how it works out here. I see it more like, I'm glad it exists because I'm a part of it.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Because what's the alternative? Try to envision any other democratic alternative that would ensure that people got waves orderly.
Yeah, look,
There's no other option.
yeah, you and I have espoused basically what we're talking about is a meritocracy that occurs naturally based on the amount of time that you've put in the water, which means that you've gotten good at what you do, that you're efficient and proficient at reading the ocean and catching the waves that come in. And that just comes with time. And as we've sort of almost beat this horse down, beat this dead horse, there are these newcomers that are just infiltrating, and it's dangerous. But I do think that the waves and the situation sort of eventually works out,
Yeah, and so I agree with you. It's not altruism that is the reason the hierarchy was formed. And it probably is more selfish than anything, but the selfishness is serving those who spend the most time and have done, like, if you're there every day, you understand the way the ocean works, then of course you would feel a certain selfishness to get more of the resource than somebody who just showed up on day one. But that's also democratic, by nature. And so there's no other way to divvy out the resource than by that method.
Yeah. And I will say, as I reflect on my experience at locations where I'm not a part of the hierarchy, where I am a newcomer, I think those are some of my most rewarding sessions, because I went out there, I knew that my spot was in the back of the line, and I used my knowledge base to effectively get what came to me, but not going overboard, being number 20 or whatever it was, and catching, 7 or 8 really good waves, and just knowing that I fit in with everybody and I didn't cause a problem. And I leave those sessions going, wow, that was a great session. I fit right in. I did my part. I didn't go over, I didn't, and I can't wait to go back tomorrow, I can recall that.
It's all related to low expectations. And, when you're showing up with low expectations, then you always have more fun and it over delivers on the expectations. Whereas if you show up and you're like, this is my court, I'm going to go sit out the back and get a set wave, you're almost inevitably going to be let down.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's kind of a life lesson, expectations, and
it really is.
Yeah,
it really is.
Well, what do you got for us?
Well, we got the Pipe Masters, but I'll also, since we're talking about things I just published, I did just publish that Joel Tudor conversation this morning.
So tell me about that. Now, I know I should listen to it.
No, we could chat about it though.
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear. So you sent me a text. You said, I just had a pod with Joel, and you said he didn't cut any corners. Joel doesn't do that anyway. Joel's going to kind of just lay it all out there. So let's just start at the beginning. Did you talk about Tosh and the Pipeline Masters?
A little bit. Yeah. It was actually, Tosh was surfing that day. I recorded with Joel on Friday, and Tosh was in the water just before we started recording. So we did talk about that. He's really excited for Tosh about that. And interesting, Joel was supposed to go over there and commentate in the event, but due to his suspension and the WSL sanctioning of the event, he was not allowed to commentate in the booth for his son's own heat.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. That's a nugget right there, because he was over there. I actually saw Joel on the pipe cam on Surfline, like catching waves and kicking out and stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's over there to kind of cheer on Tosh. So he flew back. So he probably didn't say too much about that, other than because he just probably wants to keep a low profile with the WSL and all that BS.
Well, not necessarily, because we talked at length about the WSL on air. So I'm not sure. I don't think he's worried about keeping a low profile with them, but he was definitely excited for Tosh to be in the event, and explained it just as, this is experience in the water. Like, this is an opportunity for him to go out there and get waves. And he was proud of him. He's like, he surfed really well. And I watched Tosh's heat that morning. I don't know if you saw it, but he got a sick wave in that heat,
Yeah.
Like,
and frankly, Tosh's time in the booth was great too. I mean, look, I've seen Tosh grow up since he was 1 year old. And Tosh is just a good guy. He was a good kid. Now he's a good young man. And he's a great surfer, but I think more importantly, he handles himself with a little bit, well, not a little bit, but with the moments that I've seen him in the public sphere, he's been graceful and gracious, and has a sense of humility that's sort of refreshing.
Yeah, I agree. Whatever rabble rousing Joel Tudor does on the internet, and probably in the water as well, his values of respecting elders and all of that stuff, you could tell he has instilled in Tosh,
Yeah. And look, I surf with Joel a lot. Joel's really mellow in the water. He's just quiet and unassuming, and is kind, and realizes that he's kind of in the public sphere, and people will come up and say hello and meet him, and he's always really cool.
Yeah, he gets a lot of waves though.
Yeah, but that goes back to the hierarchy.
So he messaged me. I'd never met him before.
Yeah.
And he messaged me out of the blue on Instagram, basically just saying, I'm ready to break the silence about the WSL thing. It's totally like whack that it's been managed the way that or mismanaged the way that it's been mismanaged. And I recognize that podcasts are kind of one of the last free mediums that we have. And I'm going to tell my side. I was like, dude, tell me when and where I'll be there with a microphone, let you go. And so he dodged two things that I walked him back to, read the direct quote, and held him kind of accountable to answer.
Yeah.
And he seemed to be politically, straddling a line, but acknowledged, like, I basically created a question and said affirmative or negative, and he said affirmative, essentially, so that he didn't have to use his own words to jump on the grenade, but allow me to kind of tee it up for him.
What was that in regards to?
So the two things would have been, he made those Instagram posts. WSL did not suspend him due to those things. And then over the course of a few days, or maybe a week or so, he then left a comment in one of the threads suggesting that Jessie Miley Dyer has a special relationship with one of the athletes at the time or in the past, and that would compromise the integrity. It's a conflict of interest for her in her position to have a quote relationship with one of the athletes. So Joel pointed that out. That is when Joel got canceled. That's when he got suspended. Right. And so the WSL's press release, it wasn't even a press release, but their statement about why he got suspended quoted a couple of things in the rule book, but it was left very vague. It was like he's disparaged surfing's image, is kind of
Yeah.
what they said.
Yeah.
And so I said, look, this is what the WSL said. What were they referring to when they made this statement? And he brings up those Instagram posts. I go, well, the timeline doesn't match because they didn't cancel you. They didn't suspend you with those Instagram posts. He goes, well, there's some other stuff too. And I go, well, the timeline matches with this comment that you made about Jesse. But the statement that they made is about the organization. So if the organization, first of all, should never get their feelings hurt, because it's an organization and there's no such thing as bad publicity, and it all drives traffic. And if you showed up at the next event after this debacle, it would drive more traffic to that event than anything else possibly could. No amount of marketing, no amount of press could drive as much traffic as this would. But if somebody in the organization got their feelings hurt and then they made a decision because their feelings were hurt based on or for the organization, then that would be problematic, and that looks like what it was if you look at the timeline. And he basically said yes to that. So he got canceled because somebody within the organization got their feelings hurt about something he said on Instagram. That's what it was.
Which was Jesse, we're assuming.
Correct. And then the second thing was just about whether Vans mandated that he delete those posts. And, he dodged it the first time or two, and then ultimately said he was yes.
All right.
It was heavily suggested that he should delete him.
And what about, you mentioned that he talked about his love of cannabis.
Oh, yeah. It was interesting, actually. He, again, didn't dodge it, but I brought it up, hey, what role does cannabis play in your mental health, in your well-being, in your life? Has it helped or hindered performance and ambition? And he's like, you know what? Alcohol's so much worse for you. He does a 5-minute diatribe on how bad alcohol is. And I'm like, wait.
Fentanyl.
Yeah, I know. I was like, wait. And I even said on air, I was like, dude, I'm shocked to hear you kind of on your heels defending it in relation to something that's worse than it. I thought you were just going to come out hot and just be like, this is how it's beneficial. These are the health benefits. This is how it served me well. And he didn't really do any of that. He just basically said that it's not as bad as.
He's right, by the way.
I know.
But,
it turns out he's honest, what I mean? But I thought he was going to try to play it like it's, like everybody should do it or something.
Wow. And what else? Did he talk about the longboard tour, the lack thereof, or or what you and I consider to be less than ideal, venues for the longboard tour?
He did a little bit. We did talk about that. It wasn't so much about the venues. It was just more about equality related conversation. They should respect and treat the longboard tour seriously, not just like a novelty sideshow.
Yeah.
The other interesting conversation though that we had was around board building, and him showing regret for working with Surf Tech in the mid 2000s. But basically, he was young. He looked up to Takayama, Velzy. They both had deals with Surf Tech, and they were in early with Surf Tech where they got this really high commission rate for every board sold. And they were able to grandfather Joel into that. So they basically, both Velzy and Takayama were like, hey, come on in. You got to make money on this. This is like a check shows up every month. We've had to work for every dollar and invest all this money. We spend $1 to make $2, and it's tons of work. With this new scenario, a check just shows up every month. You got to do it. And so, of course, when those two people who you venerate are telling you to do this, you do it. And so he did it, but he realized real quickly how detrimental it was to the industry and to everybody else that he looked up to, and to all of his friends and everybody coming up underneath him. And so that's when he pivoted. And he was saying that Lamination San Diego, which is his glass shop that they have built recently or in the last 2 years, that is an effort to correct some of the wrongs, to like build it out to California's strict regulatory and EPA standards, pay everybody well, charge, a lot for the work, but then pay everybody really well and do phenomenal work and bring back a lot of the, classic work, resin work, pin lines, stuff like that, that he's, it's come back in the last, he
Yeah,
didn't bring it back.
look, that stuff's never left. I mean, it's not like there were no glass shops. There's been glass shops in California for
A lot of that
whatever,
stuff
since
had gone out of a lot of that
since-
stuff had gone out of fashion though. And
I don't know. What do you mean? Give me an example. When did pin
um
lines go out of fashion? Peter
in
St.
the
Pierre's been
mid to
doing pin
late
lines for 40 years at
in the
Moonlight.
mid to late 2000s through 2015. And the other thing is
What?
Peter St. Pierre.
I don't
Yeah,
know about that. You're telling me that
absolutely.
glass jobs, surfboard glass jobs with resin tint and pin lines went out of fashion? I don't think so.
Well, there was always a
Not here in
segment
San
of the
Diego, they didn't.
That's true. And there's always been a segment of the population that buys those, but there's been times where pointy thrusters with clear,
Well,
laminations have been more popular than anything. But
maybe.
to
I
your
would say
point,
if that's the case, it was more like the mid 90s.
yeah, okay, maybe so. But to your point, Peter St. Pierre and a handful of other people are the only remaining people that are doing it, and there aren't apprentices under them and all that sort of stuff. And so that's part of the mission as well, is to invest in that and create a career path for it, to where you can earn a decent living doing it. And so then, of course, the conversation of, as it's related to surf tech, the conversation of Kelly came up and what he's done and invested money in and all that. And Joel just said, I learned and I adjusted my business practices, but I'm shocked that some of the people, the athletes who have made the most money off surfing, are operating under those same business practices and hurting a lot of the industry that supported them along the way, and who, by the way, are still working manufacturing surfboards and being hurt by that business, So that was interesting. He called Kelly out about that. And
who else did he
yeah.
call anyone out? Did he call anyone else out or just Kelly?
It was mainly Kelly, and then also stating about Kelly. Hold on. Also stating about Kelly posting on Instagram wearing a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, which Kelly never earned a blue belt. And Joel's like very adamant about like, holy cow, that was just such a slap across the face for anybody who's ever earned a blue belt. He's like, going from white to blue is the hardest belt. Like, that's harder than getting a black belt because, you're new and you
How does he know that Kelly didn't earn a blue belt?
Because he's in the space and he knows everybody in the space and he knows Kelly. He and Kelly are friends. So he knows Kelly has never earned the blue belt, but Kelly posted on Instagram wearing it because he didn't want to post on Instagram wearing his white belt. And so Joel called him out on it. And he said, and Joel's right, because he and Kelly are friends and he talked to Kelly, and Kelly never claimed to have a blue belt. He just posted about it.
Okay. Interesting, man.
Yeah. So some juice.
Thick.
Yeah, they really are. But I mean, super entertaining,
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a great. So there's two really good ones. There's Lane Davey and there's Joel Tudor on Surf Splendor that you, David, did. You're killing it, dude. I got to admit, I'm like, fuck, David is killing. David, you're like the guy in the lineup. You're like, I got to up my game, man.
The conversations, these people want to talk,
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of podcasts. Did you just get another guy under your umbrella? Yeah. Tell me about him. What's his name? What's he do? I don't know much about him.
Justin Jay is a photographer. He's based in New York City.
Yeah.
Interestingly, he was P. Diddy's photographer, like traveled on the road with him for years.
Yeah.
When P. Diddy was like at the height of performing and all that. Um,
If you asked me to name a one P. Diddy song, I would be like, I have no idea. I am so like out of that whole sphere, you
you
know.
know who he is, though. You know what I mean?
I
Which
know
means
who
he's
P.
that
Diddy is,
big,
but I'm not sure I could pick him out of a lineup. But
right?
I know the name P. Diddy.
Well, Justin grew up in Carpinteria and grew up surfing, and um, so he has a fondness for surfing. So he spent 10 years going to the North Shore every winter, and he
Yeah.
would shoot photos there.
Oh,
And
cool.
so,
I have
yeah,
heard
so
of his
he,
name, by the way. I don't mean to say that I didn't know who he was.
well,
I'm just
he's,
interested in learning more about him.
yeah, you can't, I wouldn't call him a surf photographer because he's never really made his living off of that, but
Yeah.
he's documented a lot of surfing and a lot of basically North Shore surfing during the wintertime for
Yeah.
10 years. So he put out a coffee table book. We probably discussed it here like
We
2 or
did.
3 years ago.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
It was called HI 1K. And it's phenomenal, you know, and like so much of John and all the people who we
Yeah.
love, like
Yeah.
seeing their intimate moments on the North Shore, not really surfing imagery so much, but a lot of just
Yeah.
behind the scenes stuff. Anyways, Justin's been recording a podcast for 2 years now
Oh, good.
and publishing it on his own. And so we've been talking more and more about working together. So now I'm distributing that for him. The network's placing advertising for him and all that sort of stuff. So
He's
partnered
pretty
up.
connected then. I mean, he's probably already had some great guests and is going to continue to have great guests.
Yeah, he's connected to the fashion world, the celebrity world, the music world, all that sort of stuff. But he does have like surf and skate luminaries, you know, Tony Hawk, Paul Rodriguez. He had Art Brewer on. He just released Pat O'Connell was his most recent episode.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's really good.
Cool.
Yeah. So busy.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. And this is your baby's first Christmas, right?
He was around last year, but barely, you know, he was born in the end of October. So he's like a month and a half, 2 months old.
Right.
But this is the first time he literally, like, he's giving us ho ho hos whenever he sees a Santa. And he sees, so cool. It's the funniest thing ever. He's hunting for Santa constantly. Like we go for a walk and people have the blow up Santas in their yard, you know, and he's just like, like freaking out.
I don't know if you have this in your neighborhood, but we have you know, like I can drive like a quarter of a mile away to a suburb area and it's just insane next level. The whole block is like lit up with, and they've got like trains that go over the street and just like there's people like serving apple cider every night. Like it's next level Christmas. Do they have that where you're at?
We do. We absolutely do. And we went to a neighborhood that's known for that, where like everybody decorates on the water with canals. So you're like walking through and we went and did that with him earlier in the week. So yeah, his mind is blown, you know. It's really
My
cool.
mind is blown. How do these, if you were a neighbor in that neighborhood, like you just buy a house in July and you're like, yeah. And then like October rolls around and you're like, dude, you're expected to step up your game and you got to be here each and every night. And oh, by the way, your electricity bill is going to go through the roof.
It's no joke. I mean, honestly, the few houses that don't really go all out, they look like a-holes. You're like, who is this jerk? You know?
Yeah, well, no, these neighborhoods that I'm talking about, you're either all in or you're selling your home and moving.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Totally. But I gotta say, I love it. Like, I mean, I always kind of appreciated the festivity, you know, of Christmas, but seeing Austin's mind blown is so fun. Just cool. When we go downstairs in the morning and turn the Christmas tree on, he just gets the hugest smile, you know, it's like the highlight of his day. Yeah. So you got to appreciate it. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, let's see. We've got the Vans Pipeline Masters, which frankly, I thought was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the format. I think and I know that the the broadcasters, the commentators talked about how much they enjoyed it too. By the way, the commentating team I thought was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed sort of the sincerity and the pauses. I thought Cliff Capono was great. Salemo was awesome. Um, I don't know where you want to start, but gosh, the format was awesome. I love the idea of the last heat of the day could turn everything upside down.
Yeah. Well, let's start at the beginning. Ballroom Stack and Molly Picklum. Or let's start at the end, rather. Ballroom Stack and Molly Picklum. Congratulations. Really did not anticipate either of them. And to be honest, have very little awareness of Molly Picklum. So this is a huge entry point for her onto the world stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Congrats. I don't think you and I are surprised by Ballroom. Even though
Right.
you just said you kind of were, but I don't think you are, because he's been a mainstay out there. He's one of those guys at the beginning of the show. We talked about earning your way into the hierarchy. He's one of these guys. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in his 15th year or more out there. I mean, he's been there probably since he was 13 or 14 or whatever. He's probably 30 now, maybe older. And I mean, he's just paid his dues and slowly, worked his way in. So Ballroom doesn't surprise me. It wouldn't have been who I picked, but it's not a shock because we've all seen him over the years. I mean, he's put out insane edits, and he's been involved in the Wave of the Winter events or whatever these digital send in your entry type events are. He's always there. But Molly's, not sure, at the beginning of this event, if you asked me if she was goofy foot or regular, I wouldn't know.
Right. Ballroom, I totally agree with everything you said. They said it on the commentary a couple of times, and I think we've even said this over the years a couple of times. He's a guy who camps out in Hawaii and paddles out at Pipe when nobody else is out. So big unruly days that are just victory at sea, basically, where there's nobody's interested in surfing because the waves aren't good enough. Even though they're not afraid that it's too big, it's just not good enough. Ball is bobbing around out there and finding little opportunities. What ends up happening on days like that is you do a ton of duck diving and you take a ton of punishment, and he's willing to do all that just to get kind of the one or two out there. And so he's surfed it in a variety of conditions, and I think all of that really service you well when you're in an event and there's shifting conditions and stuff like that. So yeah, he would not have been my pick either, but it makes perfect sense that he was the one who was the last man standing. And you referenced the format of the event. So it was a leaderboard format, meaning there was no eliminations, and everybody surfed, I think, 2 heats. I originally thought it was going to be everybody surfed 3 heats, but it was just everybody surfing 2
It
heats.
was 3, but the forecast made them pare it down.
Oh, okay. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And your top 2 scores from both heats, from either heat or all the heats, end up going into your leaderboard ranking. And so 4 people then have entry into the finals. All of those leaderboard scores go away, and it's simply 1 heat at the end of the event. You said you liked it. I'm okay with it, but it reminded me a bit of the finals day format that the WSL has had the last 2 seasons, where, Carissa Moore was clearly the winner of the season. And yet, because of a poor performance on the final day, Stephanie Gilmore won the world title. I was concerned about that happening in this event, and it kind of, to a certain degree, happened with Carissa. Carissa, again, interestingly, Carissa was the in-form female surfer of the event. She got arguably the best wave any female surfer's ever gotten at backdoor. Legitimately sick backdoor wave. And so those are the highlights that you're going to remember of the females throughout the event. And it's just a shame that she ends up not winning the event. She lost due to an interference, essentially, in the final. But you know what I mean? Like, carrying that momentum through to the final, I would think, or I think the solution would be it's a one-on-one final. Like the leaderboard format, I think is great, but only two people should then be in the final because unless the waves are pumping, there's not enough waves for four people, basically. There's, three sets, let's say, with two waves each, which equals six waves, but there's four people who need two rides each. So there's six waves on offer for a total of needed 8 waves. It's just not enough. And there's an opportunity for, I know it's not supposed to be, quote, fair, but there is opportunity for something very unfair to happen. Whereas if it was the leaderboard format and only the final 2 made it into the finals, you could still give third place the third place amount of money and fourth place the fourth place amount of money. They just don't get a surf in the final. And then if it's just one-on-one, there's a lot more opportunity to really see who the best surfer is at the event.
Yeah, that might be a great, way to solve this conundrum. I will say that whether you're a fan of this format or a fan of the sort of the more traditional format, you're going to be able to find fault with each. There's no real perfect one. So I guess maybe this was refreshing in that it was sort of the backdoor shootout, but with let's start from scratch for the final. So I don't know.
But Ballroom, on the other hand, showed up at the final
Yeah.
and did exactly what he did through the leaderboard rankings too,
And he did it towards the sort of the middle back half of the final too.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't, I think what's the Hawaiian's name? Kalana Apau.
Yeah.
He really had everyone's hearts. Like everyone was kind of like, oh, that would be really cool if a full-blooded Hawaiian won.
Yeah.
And he started off strong in the final, but Ballroom kind of turned the tables.
Yeah. So in the men's final, it was Ballroom in first, Griffin Colapinto in second. Also would not have picked that. Kaulana Apo in third, and Joao Chianca in fourth. On the women's side, it was Molly Picklum in first, Betty Lou Sakura Johnson in second, Caitlin Simmers in third, and then Carissa Moore with that interference in fourth. I really felt like the women were almost the main storyline of this event because they really stepped up and surfed better than we've seen the CT female surfers surf. And the CT females have not had a lot of opportunities out there. They had one event this past year and a specialty event prior. So they haven't had a ton of opportunity, but neither of these girls. And these girls within the first 2 heats, all of them essentially, not just 1 or 2, but all of them fully were charging, fully were actually making barrels, making crazy drops, making crazy barrels. And it was really like you watch them go toe to toe and just kind of out edge one another. It was really cool.
Yeah, no, it was pretty fascinating. Of course, Sierra Kerr got that incredible wave that were in the semifinals, or in the last heat, I should say, where she was making her way moving forward to the final, but there was an interference, which was unfortunate. That was a pretty mind-blowing deep backdoor wave. So yeah, you're right. All the girls stepped up. The second round, the second day, I guess you would say, was obviously much smaller and a little more tame and manageable. But look, the girls were sent out in the big stuff for round 1, for most of the girls in round 1. And it was pretty fascinating. Absolutely. I will say this though. You mentioned the men's final. Oh, by the way, one thing about the women, I was impressed by Moana's backside. I wasn't sure that she was going to be able, I figured she was just going to be going at the pipe left, the true pipeline left, and her backside surfing at backdoor was solid. But my interest, I don't know, let me ask you this. My takeaway from the men's final is that Joao Chianca is a total dick. That's kind of my takeaway. He just seemed like I don't know. It just seemed like he was ruffling Griff's feathers. He was ruffling other people's feathers. Like he maybe wasn't taking the whole like aloha sportsmanship thing to heart. And I think it came back to bite him a little bit.
Yeah, it did. And it's interesting that level of aggression that he was paddling with, he was literally paddling into and over people.
Yeah.
So making full contact, blocking their path, getting in there, whatever, all of it. Total dick move. But we've seen Gabriel Medina employ those exact same tactics. The difference is Gabriel wins the heat. And so we find ourselves as the viewers going, well, how do you really criticize him? Because ultimately this is a competition and he's going to do whatever it takes to win. If you're that aggressive and you end up fourth place in the heat, then you just look like a dick. Like there's no reason to do it at that point. If you do it and it works and you win, great. If you do it and you lose, you just look like a dick. So I agree with you.
Yeah, I think part of it is that there was no interference rule. There was no priority rule. Well, there was interference, but there was no priority rule. So on top of that was that, hey, let's just be good sports here, but
Correct.
we're going to leave it wide open. If you're deepest, it's your turn. And he was pushing that to the limit. So I think that's where, some of this sort of bad taste in our mouths comes from.
Yeah. And, the funny thing is it didn't work in ruffling anybody's feathers. Like Griff smoked him in that heat, and it seemed like he was doing it specifically to Griff. Balaram stuck to his own game plan, to beat them all, smiling the whole way. And so, yeah, it's like, it
I
needs
just wonder
to be
if
effective.
do you think that that's going to come back to haunt Joao?
No.
Like, do you think that first of all, he probably doesn't give a shit, because based on his behavior out there, he didn't give a shit, and I just wonder if his fellow competitors on the CT all saw what we saw and were like, I mean, frankly, I think last season he was pretty aggressive too. I mean, it's not that he was out of character. It's just that he had an opportunity to sort of adapt to what he was given in the Vans Pipeline Masters. And he was just himself, I guess. I think that's his true nature, is just to be like scrappy and like, dude, I'm in a contest. I got a jersey on. Get the hell out of my way.
Yeah, I don't think that it's going to come back to bite him at all. I think the tour is cutthroat. Those waves were also really, really, you had to be cutthroat out there to a degree if you wanted to get your share. There weren't a lot of opportunities in that final. And so if it was big and plenty of surf, he might not have employed those tactics, but he felt like he needed to. And I think that those tactics actually work well on tour, and Gabriel's proven that. And so he's taken a page out of that book, and it is what it is. Like, I don't think he needs to be loved by everyone. He's just going to go out and try to win heats.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of priority and or interference, though, it was interesting the way that you're talking about with Sierra Kerr. She got an interference on. It was an epic ride, would have been a huge score, but she got an interference on it because Pua de Soto took off deeper and first, and there's no priority. However, anybody watching that wave would tell you Pua was way too deep and never going to make that wave. Pua herself probably would have said, I was way too deep. I never would have made that wave. Therefore, it's not a burn. Like if that happened in real life, Sierra would have been given a pass. She's allowed to go because Pua is not going to make the wave. So it's interesting that in the contest format, she got an interference.
Yeah, it was pretty close. I mean, I agree with you. I'm telling 9 times out of 10, that girl's not going to make that wave. What was her name? Pua
Pua de Soto, Dwayne de Soto's daughter.
Oh shit, yeah. You don't want to mess. First of all, any De Soto paddling into any wave, just let them go. Do not get in their way. But yeah, I don't think she was going to make it. But like I said, you got a jersey on. You really kind of got to look both ways and pull back. And it's unfortunate because it was a deep, you know, it was a great ride by Sierra, but I don't know, man. It was just,
Well,
you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you don't go, she's not going to make it. If you do go,
yeah,
you get an interference.
yeah. Well, one of the storylines, I got a couple of these, but one of the main storylines that we were tracking prior to the event was the emphasis on scoring aerial surfing. That did not come into conversation at all throughout the event.
No, no, it didn't. And I don't know. I mean, I just think it's like we said, you know, weeks ago, this is square peg round hole syndrome. It's pipeline. We're here to get tubed. If you want to see aerials, go down to Gums, go wherever. We can do that later. But it's not to say that in a month and a half at the Billabong Pro Pipe, somebody gets a killer barrel and Griff does and lands that backside rotation, he's probably going to get scored a little higher, you know. But
that's the thing is, for all of the discussion that was had prior to the event, they always would have done that anyways. Griff next month at the Pipe Masters or the Pipe Pro, the Billabong Pipe Pro, if he gets an air section at the end of the barrel, he would have gone for the air then, no matter what Stab did with this event or Vans did with this event.
Yeah.
So it was a square peg in the round hole. It just it was a silly ambition to set out in the first place. And the interesting thing was the waves weren't even big barreling pipe. Like, it seems like, you know, this would have been an opportunity if airs were really incentivized. This would have been an opportunity. The forecast and the conditions and all that would have presented opportunities to do airs, but it's just, they're few and far between, no matter what, you know?
Yeah. Not a good call. And the lack of, you know, the silence was deafening, you know, regarding discussion of that stuff.
Totally. The other conversation that we were tracking was about the blow-ins. You know, Vans and Stab inviting Craig Anderson, Rasta Rob, Michael February, guys like that. What Al Cleland Jr. What are your thoughts on those guys and their performances?
Well, I think, as is the case with most contests, as far as my personal preference, you can get rid of the bottom half of the field and I won't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather just see the top 10 pipe surfers in the world surfing multiple heats against each other multiple times. You know what I mean? Like, just imagine, I don't know, take the top 12 pipe surfers and give them 2 days of competition and just watch those guys go for 2 days. That would be sick.
It'd be insane.
And I will say Mikey February, I thought, surfed well. I didn't see Rasta Rob's heat. I didn't see Craig Anderson's heat, but I didn't see Alan Cleland Jr.'s heat. But, you know, I think, again, as an end user consumer, I want to see the best in the world. And I know all those guys we just mentioned are great surfers, and I'm a big fan of theirs. But I mean, you and I could pick 12 of the top pipe surfers in the world and watch them for 2 days going at it and seeing what the final heat tally is, you know, like, that'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah, it would be the most interesting. In fact, there were moments, you know, Aton Osborne got an insane backdoor wave. That was exciting. Mike February got one or two that were really cool. Mikey Wright got a crazy right that was just unruly, and he surfed it flawlessly. But for those few individual highlights, not nearly enough to incorporate, you know, 12 surfers into the event just to have 3 or 4 individual highlights. If it was the scenario that you said, where it's the 12 best surfers in the world for 2 or 3 days straight, you'd have infinitely more highlights. So yes, there was a level of excitement, individual punctuations throughout, but not enough to justify the inclusion. With that in mind, you and I were texting on day 1 or 2 of the event, and I said, you know, it's just not the same without the best surfers in the world here. Like, yeah, we all want to watch pipe, and the fact that there's a pipe event on draws our attention. We give it our attention, but it's not the same. It doesn't have the same gravity as when John's out there. And it's hard to even compare Balaram's stack to Gabriel Medina or Idolo or Kelly, because you need that comparison. You need them in the water at the same time. And
Yeah,
so I felt like it was a little let down.
I totally agree. And I might have sent this to you, but somebody sent it to me as well, which was, congrats to Balaram and to Molly, but specifically for the men, it's the Vans pipe, asterisk masters. There's definitely an asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. At least in the minds of, the hardcore end user consumers like us who have seen years and years and years of pipe events. And again, I'm not here to take away from what those guys did, because it was a fun event, and I'm stoked that Balaram won 100 grand or whatever it was. But you got to ask yourself, which of those four guys would be in the finals, if the top surfers in the world were in this event.
Yeah. And we don't know the answer, but we would love to know that answer ultimately, and you're right. You can't take anything away from him because he earned it. Like, he earned it in that format, in that event, for what it was. So yeah, it's epic that he did it, but we will remember that it wasn't, the best surfers in the world weren't there in the event.
It'd be cool if somehow he got a wild card into the Billabong Pipe Pro, something like that would be kind of cool. Again, because I don't want to come on here and just poo-poo. He was great and it was fun, but
it's not even about
I would tell you that I'm sure that Balaram would feel the same way if he was like, dude, I wish they were in it too. How great would my victory be if I had beaten John and Kelly and Nidalo and Gabe, and he did obviously take down some of the greatest surfers. There's just, there's a lack of competitive prowess, I think, amongst some of these guys. Yeah, they're pipe specialists, but I mean, when you look at it, you go, when was the last time any of these guys were ever in a final? Jamie for sure. Mason Ho, I don't know. Has Mason Ho ever been in a final at an event? Maybe like a
the
Rip
Dahui.
Huh?
He's made the Dahui backdoor shootout.
Yeah. So again, I'm sure that we could find some, times when these guys were, competitively aware. I don't know.
What did you feel about Jamie O'Brien riding a soft top in his heat?
I don't know what to think about that. I was kind of like, good for him. First of all, it's a savvy move from a marketing standpoint for Jamie. He's got nothing to lose and everything to gain, and Catch Surf, his sponsor that makes those soft tops, good for them. I sense that, and Jamie talked about it. I don't know if you heard him talking about it, but he was basically saying, look, if it was real 8-foot, 12-foot pipe, and I needed my little Takoro blade to just knife through everything, but it was that kind of smaller day. And I think he was kind of going, we wouldn't even be having this event if it wasn't the last couple of days of the waiting period. I mean, this isn't really real pipe. So I'm just going to go out there on not a real pipe board.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a feeling one way or the other. I kind of got it. I was kind of like, all right. It does kind of, if you're an event producer and a promoter, you're kind of going, dude, you're not taking my event, seriously. And it's kind of looks bad in that regard.
Yeah, I think he prioritized his vlog over the event at that point, and it was his second heat, and he knew his point totals weren't enough to get him into the running for the final. So he just prioritized his vlog and the entertainment value. But what was interesting to me is that board had value, like in those conditions where it didn't require the Takoro that you're talking about. He was able to sit deeper. He was able to kind of sit in a position and get a type of wave that nobody else would be able to get. And if that wave came through, he could have got a 10 on it on that board.
Yeah.
And the way the wave that he did get, or the couple that he got, he surfed them flawlessly on that thing. Like, he can pig dog into a slinky kind of yoga stance and get fully barreled out there. So if he's can get in early on that wave, that's bigger than where anybody else would get, because he's able to sit deeper and all that and get position on it, he can get the 10-point ride.
Yeah, no, look, he's one of the best surfers in the world. There's no doubt he can ride anything out there and probably pull it off. And he's put in enough time on that soft top to be able to be comfortable with it in any of those conditions. And it's kind of neat. Again, it's kind of neat to watch, the fins release and him engage his rail and make it over bumps and stuff. I'm at that point, I was kind of like, I kind of get it. I don't think he felt like he was going to be able to advance. And so he was just going to go put on a show. He's kind of being a showman, which is,
yeah,
as an end user, that's kind of what we want. We want to see a show. So,
and that's what he does. And speaking of boards, interestingly, Ballroom Stack won the event riding a Kaimana Henry surfboard, which I didn't even know Kaimana shaped or built boards.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, right? That an
Super
underground
cool
guy, legend, kind of a guy who's known as a red hot surfer in his own right. It's just sort of in the backyard making boards. I'm sure everyone in the North Shore knows that he's been making boards for a long time. It kind of reminds me of like Noah Budrow or something,
Yeah, I was totally unaware of that, and thought it was super cool and phenomenal that Ball won riding that board.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
And my final thought is on the commentary, which you brought up earlier. The highlight out of the team, in addition to everything you said, was Mahina Florence. So Mahina Florence is Nathan Florence's wife. She was doing the beach commentary, and she'd get in the booth occasionally, but largely doing the beach commentary. She was phenomenal.
Yeah, she was extremely professional, like there was no sort of awkward, what do I do now? Dead space. Oh my God. It was just, it seemed like somebody that had the utmost confidence and a real sense of command of the moment.
Completely. I mean, she's grown up on the North Shore. She's married to Nathan Florence. So she understands surfing in a very, very detailed way. And but then she's articulate, she's clearly bright, she's clearly smart, all that. And so she could be hired for any event throughout the rest of the season and the tour and all that sort of stuff. I thought she was a great addition. I thought Cliff Capono was also really great in the booth with his, science background, Dr. Cliff. And Makuakai Rothman is somebody who I think has made huge strides in the booth. I thought he was phenomenal, and I didn't always used to think he was phenomenal. I thought in the past he has provided cultural context that was important, but he would, get stuck, I don't know, saying something poignant at the right time or whatever it was, or even fumble through trying to find the right words. In this event, he was sharp, he was articulate, he was quick, and added all that, cultural context that he's always been great at.
Yeah, I think if the WSL could add Mahina and Salema, they'd be doing us all a big favor. Not to take anything away from Cliff or Makua, but those two that I mentioned at the beginning here could easily move from where they're at now to the WSL, and frankly, over to Olympic broadcasting or any other sport for that matter.
Yeah. I don't think Salema would take the job.
No, I'm just saying.
I've talked to him about that exact thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, they would have to work out some stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. Tell me more. Sounds like you're leaving me hanging. What do they have to work out?
I think he's used to a certain level of professionalism and being able to plan out your year and all that sort of stuff as the commentator that they simply don't provide.
Right. Okay. Understood.
But that was the highlight in surf news this past week. My must see moment, which is something that I saw months ago, but it was unavailable publicly until just now, is Jack Coleman's most recent film called Natural High, which is available on stabmag.com.
Yeah, I watched it. It was good. It was really good. I love Jack. Jack's a good guy. I'm a big fan of his. Some ripping on some, interesting boards. I thought the guy that was surfing finless, sort of at the beginning,
Yeah, Crookie.
that might have been the most fascinating part of the clip.
He's amazing.
He's a great surfer, and he makes you want to go try that thing out. You're like, God, man, talk about footloose and fancy free, man.
Ari, what's his name? Ari.
Maybe that's his name. Yeah.
His name is Ari. I just cannot remember his last name, but his Instagram handle is Crookie. Try to look him up as fast as possible.
He's amazing.
Ari Brown.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Great footage of him absolutely ripping. I don't know where they were. It looked like they were in the Indo or something, or like a Karamas or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I love Jack. I love his films. I love his aesthetic. I love his music selection.
The music actually was insane. The music might have been the best part.
He's
music
incredible.
Really good.
Yeah. And Jack, I don't know if you remember, but mid 2000s, he was sponsored by Volcom, Goofy Foot Shortboard Shredder.
Yeah. Yeah. I've known Jack for a while. I mean, he's from down here, isn't he?
Apparently, yeah. You mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, he said he loves golf, and I'm like, I don't think we're talking about the same guy, but apparently I didn't know he loves golf.
Yeah. I see pictures of him on the golf course on his Insta. Gotcha. And, he comes to the boardroom and stuff, and it's just a cool video, cool clip, Yeah. One minor little thing that I guess when they mentioned the pickle fork and they didn't, I was a little disappointed that they didn't bring up Jeff Alexander on some level somewhere, but what are you going to do?
Bring him up now.
Well, I mean, it's my understanding that Jeff Alexander was the first guy to do that sort of pickle fork design. And I've been friends with Jeff for probably 40 years. I've known Jeff since, 1977 or whatever. And he was an incredible shaper back then. And he, I think I want to say like maybe the late 80s, he made these Gemini boards that we called pickle forks. They had two noses, and he scooped out the bottom of between the two noses to allow for lift. And he rode them for years. He rode them over there. He lived on the North Shore for a long time. Then he moved to, I think, to Bali or somewhere in Indo. And I don't know, again, maybe that's silly of me to say, hey, you should have mentioned Jeff Alexander, because that'd be like saying every time somebody talks about a tri-fin, they have to mention Simon Anderson. It just doesn't make sense. It says, there's no need to do that. But I guess because I have a place in my heart for Jeff, because I was a little grom when he was, 5 years older than me, and I just looked up to him. And so I was like, would have been cool if they just gave a simple little nod to Jeff, who really pioneered that design. I mean, it's not like, it's a pretty rare design, and so because it's rare and because it's unique, it would have been cool to kind of, and Jeff, believe me, is a rare and unique guy. He's an interesting, he's got an interesting sort of aesthetic and take on life.
Boardroom podcast guest for 2023. He
would bring the heat, believe me. He's got some opinions.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. You're right. We'll do that.
Good.
Put him on my
list. All right. Well, hey, Merry Christmas, dude.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. By the way, I have a must-see moment. Zeke and Destroy on Stab. Jacob Sikelski. Zeke. He is a piece of work, man. And if you want to get Zeke's the kind of guy that back in the early 80s, he would have been we'd be like, hey, who invented the phrase "yeah guy"? It'd been Zeke.
I haven't seen Zeke and Destroy.
It just came out on Stab. It's pretty cool.
Is it?
I mean, it's a whole lot of Zeke. Let me just say that. Just
Is it a
get ready.
surf
It's a
edit?
whole lot of Zeke. Okay. What?
Is it a surf edit or like a Jackass video?
No, it's a surf edit with skating and just him going to Mexico and Indo and Hawaii and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Surfing in La Jolla and stuff. And it's just, you know, I think it's fun. It's fun. It kind of has a lost video vibe from the 90s, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of a little punk rocky.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
He surfs really good.
Yeah.
It's hard to deny that. I hate that actually, because I see him being a jerk and I'm like, God, but then he shreds and I'm like, God, I have to pay attention now.
I think he's a pretty nice kid. I think he means well. And I know
I think he's calmed down, right? Is what it is.
Yeah, I think that too. And you know, he rubs some people the wrong way, but I think as with anything in life, like when somebody rubs me the wrong way, I need to kind of turn it around and instead of prosecuting that guy, I need to turn it around and become the defense attorney and kind of look at my own part in it, you know?
Yeah. Good.
Anyway.
Good policy.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, look, David, it's been an afternoon show. We're a little flat. We apologize. We're going to come back with coffee and morning spit next week. Until next time, adios and aloha.